Hey everyone, welcome to Coffee with Changemakers. I'm Robin.
And I'm Yoshi. On the Coffee with Changemakers podcast, we explore the stories of changemakers taking on some of today's biggest social and environmental challenges.
Every episode, we host an intimate conversation on social impact and leadership, where we listen, learn, and connect over a cup of coffee with inspiring guests from all over the world.
So before we jump into today's episode, we have a quick ask. If you enjoy our conversations, it would mean the world to us if you subscribe, rate, and perhaps even tell a friend about the show. Your support helps us bring even more inspiring guests onto future episodes.
So, here's today's coffee chat. Enjoy.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with Changemakers. And today we'll be speaking with Kai Childs. So Kai is the co-founder of the Innovation Fellowship, a new international school in Tokyo for students who want to become successful in life by doing work that's actually meaningful to them. So Kai is passionate about supporting students to develop their own passions in ways that are good for the world and also good for their own lives. Kai is also the founder of Sekai Education and has delivered over 50 plus programs with leading schools all across Japan. So welcome to the podcast, Kai. How are you doing today?
Hi, Yoshi. Hi, Robin. It's good to be here. I'm doing good. It's actually summer holidays for us technically, so we'll be starting our second year of school in a few weeks, but right now we're just kind of getting back into work and school rhythms.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that we were able to catch you during the break. And I'm sure that we're super excited for the new school year. And I'm also excited to hear all about it because, I think that, we started talking when this school was still very much an idea. So I've seen like the full cycle, and I can't wait to hear, all the big news about, student projects, what they've been up to this year and everything else. But before we go into that, I kind of want to start off with your background and your motivation. So, for a lot of our listeners who may not know about you personally, maybe you could share a little bit about yourself, like where you were born, raised, the various international schools you attended, all of that good stuff.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm from Japan. I grew up in Tokyo. I'm half British, half Japanese, so same as Robin, our co-host here. I know Robin grew up in the UK, but I grew up most of my life in Tokyo, in international schools in Tokyo. And for university, I went to the UK. I ended up studying business. In the UK, when you pick a degree, you're quite limited in terms of having to really focus on that degree. So it was essentially a business school degree, which definitely at the time didn't resonate with me at all. Doing business is interesting, but studying it at a very theoretical level, all these management theories and all these things, supply chain stuff wasn't very exciting to me. And so, and introducing my story, to an extent, I think it really kind of started in university when I realized that what I was studying was not interesting to me. It didn't feel meaningful to me. And I saw the pathways that was sort of presented for students who graduated business school, at least the business schools that I went to in Warwick University, which was basically to go into consulting or finance. And nothing wrong with those, obviously, industries or jobs. But, when it came, I remember like second year of university, everyone was applying for internships and people were, coming up to me being like, hey, have you applied to that McKinsey internship, that Boston Consult? The question wasn't even like, are you interested in consulting? What are you going to do for your internship this summer? It was like, have you applied, right? And so for me, I remember looking at these applications and not even feeling the motivation to apply. And so if I don't even feel the motivation to apply, like, why would I feel the motivation to work for that company, right? Was my thinking at the time. And that's when it was sort of a turning point. And I won't go in full detail now in this answer. But that's when I really started to try and create and find my own path. And it's nice that this podcast is titled Coffee with Changemakers. I mean, this was back in 2013 when Changemakers was, I think, a new, more of like a buzzword. And the first thing I did when I graduated university was embark on my own travel project, which was called, the 50-day Changemaker project. And it's a little bit embarrassing now, but I think I have to also be, acknowledge my former self that I was trying to find a pathway or find a sort of way that I could, create value in the world and do something that was meaningful to me. And so that's what I did. And obviously many, many, many years later, eventually now I'm running this school with our co-founders. But hopefully that's some background to begin with.
Cool. That's amazing. I mean, I think it's really cool that you sort of noticed that at such a young age, because me, just like everybody else at the time when we were, 21, 22 years old, like it was either, for a lot of us who studied abroad, it was like either finance or consulting, there was no other path. It was like either one or the other, and which company are you going to work for? Like that's definitely where my mind was at. So it's really, really cool that you kind of took a step back and questioned yourself, being like, is this really the path that I want to take? So, okay. Cool.
And I feel like, Kai, we've led such parallel lives, because we're both half British, half Japanese, as you mentioned. I also studied business. I also didn't fully understand and feel passionate about what we were learning about, because everything was about profit maximization, not solving meaningful problems. And then I had the same thing. Everyone was going to these fantastic consulting companies, and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? So I very much resonate, and it sounds like we've had extremely similar paths in some ways.
We have too. Even, this 50-day Changemaker project thing that I was doing, one of the first projects I did was very much just kind of self-centered in the way that I was trying to experience different things and learn different things that was important for me. But I ended up going to the Tohoku area where the tsunami happened, right? And then doing sort of essentially turned out to be a mini sort of like documentary project. But I know, Robin, you've also, spent quite a lot of time in that area. So I funnily knew about you long before we met, because at that time I was like living in Vietnam and living in Europe and stuff. But whenever I'd come back to Japan, I'd kind of see who was in the social entrepreneurship scene. And I was like, who's this half British, half Japanese guy? Talk events, running all these ecosystem organizations. I was like, man, this guy is pretty impressive. And it's cool that fast forward maybe 6-7 years, we just can sort of have a conversation as friends and everything like that. So yeah, you are inspired by your work, Robin.
Amazing. Well, likewise, and that's why we're super happy to have you on the podcast as well.
Awesome. Well, now you're the co-founder of the Innovation Fellowship, but Kai, you've done like so many interesting things in the past, right? I mean, you were also the founder of like Sekai Education. You were like program coordinator at the Nomadic School of Business. You also led the Habataku project in Vietnam at one point. So like, I think, obviously TIF, the Innovation Fellowship, it's a culmination of all of these various experiences that you've had in the past. But can you share just a little bit more about your journey of how you got to like TIF?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we'll maybe speak a little bit more about TIF later in the podcast, but it's important to say that, starting TIF was not something that I was planning to do. I decided to be involved in starting TIF because I met my co-founder and our founder head of school, Scott Smoller, only April last year. And it was, he was the person, he has his own journey, of course. By the point that I met him in April last year, he already had sort of the vision and many aspects of the model of schools in mind. So it was a very fortuitous meeting, and we really aligned and decided to start the school together. But of course, it is interesting because you can connect the dots going backwards, and all the things I did, the little things and the big things that I did definitely led to A, me meeting Scott, and B, being ready for that kind of opportunity. And so that's just to share with the audience. But yeah, I think my journey is probably, I think some young people can definitely resonate, because throughout my 20s, I was definitely just trying to figure it out. You could perhaps say naive, but I was always just adamant on pursuing what felt meaningful to me, right? And that's a very broad thing, and it can be quite difficult to figure out, because oftentimes the only way to figure out whether something is meaningful to you, whether it's something that you're good at, whether it's something you really, really care about, is to try it and to test it out. And essentially that's what our students are doing, by the way, at our school too. But I started that journey definitely in my 20s, starting with that 50-day Changemaker project. And that was, it was essentially like a gap year, but I wasn't being paid to do it, obviously. If anything, I was using my own money to fund these travels and working on these projects. So that was like the first, again, move that I made towards the direction of trying to figure out what was meaningful to me. And I did these kind of just self-designed projects, 50 days in 5 different countries, 50 days at a time, exploring kind of different topics and challenges that I thought was, again, interesting or meaningful to me to eventually become a change maker of sorts. And so that's what I did. And that was really amazing, though, because obviously I met a lot of interesting social entrepreneurs. That was probably also the time where maybe I first came across Robin's profile, for example. But then eventually I was doing most of my travels in Asia, and then I met a social entrepreneur based in Vietnam. It was a Japanese company, Habataku, a creative education startup, essentially. And so I ended up working for them for about 2 years. And that was, again, work that was really interesting to me. It was like a startup environment. So that was that's just to share how, my travel project led to my first job in Vietnam. That was, at the time, definitely felt like the perfect job for me. But then, of course, you do the job and then you kind of evolve, and maybe even the company sort of changes direction a little bit. And so throughout my 20s, I ended up doing quite a lot of different things. It was definitely like a zigzaggy pathway. At some point, I thought that I wanted to contribute to something like much bigger. And so there was a time where I was interested in like sustainability and sort of regenerative agriculture. So I ended up even sort of living off grid on these sort of regenerative agriculture projects in like Ireland and Portugal for like 1.5 years.
Wow.
And again, at the time, that's what I thought was both something that could be impactful and something that resonated with me at the time. Again, you do it, right? You experience that life and you learn certain things about both that lifestyle and about yourselves. And at least ultimately for me, I ended up with the conclusion that, this is something really meaningful, but it didn't really feel aligned with my personal strengths or character. And so it almost looks like a step back, but I ended up doing a master's in development studies. Then ended up trying to find work back in Southeast Asia again, because I knew I really liked my time in Vietnam working for this education company, Habataku. And through that process, eventually actually ended up coming back to Japan. And then, as you mentioned briefly, Yoshi, I started freelancing for this one organization, but then ended up ultimately creating my own organization called Sekai Education. So it's hard to distill what happened in like a 10-year period, but the audience can get a feel for this is definitely like zigzaggy process. And maybe to my family and to my friends, they were like, wait, why are you doing that? How are you going from this to that? But at least at the time, it made sense to me. And I think definitely there are things that had I had a certain type of guidance, maybe I would have done differently. Then maybe there could have been, ways that I could realize certain things faster or more efficiently. But, ultimately, I feel great about my pathway because it felt meaningful to me at the time, and it's led to where I am now, where I have Sekai Education as an organization that's running, but this new mission with this new school, working with Scott and also our other co-founder Jason, feels like a very big project and something that I completely aligned with, and so. That's sort of the journey to this point.
Cool.
I love the way you mentioned the word zigzag a couple of times. And I think that word is something that we all have in common. I think in our 20s and maybe even in our early 30s, we've zigzagged a lot and had lots of different experiences. I promise we'll dive into the details of the Innovation Fellowship, but I'd love to hear how your mindset has changed from your 20s to your 30s. I often say that 20s is a time for flaring. Like you try lots of different things, you get lots of experiences. And then 30s is more like where you begin to really focus on things that you really feel passionate about and feel competent with. But what's your thoughts on the 20s versus 30s mindset?
20s versus 30s mindset. Yeah, I guess we're in our early mid 30s now. So it's definitely, but it definitely is a different mindset. I mean, it's a good question. One, like there's a part of me that's always, I think, like there's a part of me that I feel like hasn't changed throughout my 20s and 30s. Like, I guess, and we all have this, right? Like our authentic selves, or the voice we hear in our own heads, or who we are to our friends and family, all these things, like, I don't think has changed a huge amount. You know, we are who we are. But I think definitely in terms of the mindset around work and other aspects of life too, definitely I've noticed that in my 30s, I've enjoyed a sense of stability, even though part of that stability came almost accidentally. I've enjoyed a sense of committing to something that is much more long-term. And yeah, in my 20s, the focus was much more on experiencing things and knowing, having faith that if I experience different things, I would realize different things across all of those experiences, and somehow I would find a way to bring things together. All I had faith in is that surely, because I think compared to some of my at least other business school friends who also, you know, I respect a lot too, but there was a lot of emphasis on job status and salary like that. Perhaps was naive, but I had a sense of faith that, well, the money and things like this can come if you first figure out how you as a person can authentically create value in the world. So that was my focus, is like, how can I, as a person in this world, create some kind of positive value? And that would feel meaningful to me. And then surely the money will follow somehow, right? If you're creating good value. And so that was the focus. I think my 20s, again, yes, it was just about experiencing different things. And it was just more of the difference between my 20s and my 30s is that throughout all the experiences in my 20s, I learned almost like all the things that I know now that I don't want to do, right? It's almost like a process of elimination. And what's left is the things that you feel truly you can commit to and truly want. They're not just ideas or sort of impulses in the moment, if that makes sense. But so I think, again, the only way to validate to yourself what you truly care about and what truly works for you in terms of the type of work you do or who you work with, all these things, I think you just have to figure it out. And so now that I've at least figured out to an extent that I feel comfortable with now, definitely, yeah, the mindset is just more like, let's double down on this and let's see how far we can go. And there'll be like things that happen along the way, but it's like I have enough information about myself to commit now. And so this is where I'm at. Does that make sense to you guys? I mean, I don't know if you
I
can,
really love
like,
that. I think absolutely. Yeah. I think what you said about, it's not just about what you want to do, but it's also about understanding what you don't want to do. I think that's also equally as important, if not more so. And I think that might be really relevant to people listening to this as they navigate their journeys towards making change and being the best version of themselves. So thanks for sharing, Kai. I really liked your answer to that.
Yeah,
And
Kai. And
now
also,
to dive in. Oh,
sorry. Yeah.
sorry.
Just wanted to really quickly add
go for it, man.
that yeah, Kai, like I think it takes a lot of courage to really focus on, the fact that you really focused on, who you are first, like trying to figure out who you were and how to create authentic value. Like, I think that part of it is really key, because I think a lot of us sort of like, lose ourselves along the way. Like, we may start off our journey that way, but somewhere along the line, whether it be, societal obligations or expectations, sometimes it might come from your partner, sometimes it comes from your family. You're like, you know what, let's put society aside and let's sort of focus on my needs. I think a lot of people end up doing that, but for you really believed in the process, and I think that it really served you well in the end with what you've been able to discover and now focus on with TIF. So I just wanted to really quickly comment on that, because that's really cool.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think in hindsight too, though, I was definitely like a privileged position. Firstly, I went to college, and my family paid for my college tuition, so I didn't come out of university with college loans. I was of course, as I mentioned, like pivoting between different sort of types of work whenever I needed to sort of, again, like pivot. I had like a home that I could go to for even a few weeks just to kind of reset and go again. So I do feel like I had a lot more time and space and opportunity than other people, normally many people, but even, students graduating from international schools tend to have in terms of figuring out that path. Definitely there were like compromises and sacrifices I had to make along the way. I was so adamant on, figuring out what I wanted to do that sometimes that meant, being away from close friends or, making compromises in terms of relationships and things like this. So all this stuff can happen. And so that's part of the journey. But I think that's where, at least for our students or you kind of have to go on that journey, but it's good to start young if you can, if you're ready for it. And it's good to have, good guidance. And I just think it's such a shame for so many students to go to college without a strong sense of purpose. And even worse, graduate that university without a clear idea of sort of who they are, what they want to do, and who are the people that they can are aligned with to work on, meaningful projects, right? So many people graduate university quite clueless, and that just seems to be a huge shame. So why not start that process younger while in high school? And hopefully it doesn't take till 33, 34 to really feel like you're at a good place in your life in terms of everything coming together.
Yeah, I kind of want to dive a little bit into your project and impact. So can you tell me a little bit about how you launched the Innovation Fellowship, and also how you launched Innovation Fellowship, because it's a school, right? It's not every day when you get to talk to somebody who has launched a school from scratch. So if you can maybe share about that early journey, that'll be great.
Yeah. So we are a school that's quite different from the other international schools that are out there. At the same time, though, yes, like Yoshi, you alluded to, we are like a full-time international school. We're grades 9 to 12. We're a high school. Our students will go to college, and we have, our students will follow they follow the US core curriculum. They'll be doing AP exams to go to college. So for all purposes, we're like other international schools, but we're definitely quite different. And I think how we started the school was also quite unique and different. So yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. Yeah, obviously it all started with a decision to start the school, and that really, I think the decision was when I met Scott last year, April. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, he already had his own journey for about 2-3 years, really sort of questioning the education system and sort of hypothesizing what an alternative what an alternative curriculum could look like. So the point that I met him last year, April, he was also just at the crossroads where he wasn't necessarily thinking of starting a full-time international school either. He was actually working with other schools almost as like a consultant, maybe helping them to reinvent aspects of their curriculum. But through that process too, he had realized that he was able to sort of test and validate aspects of the project-based learning methodology that he created that for the right fit students worked really well. And he saw the difficulties of trying to obviously work with the existing schools where they have, so many different stakeholders and they're bound to, a specific type of curriculum, right? So when we met last in April, he was sort of pitching to me sort of this, both the necessity for a full-time international school and what that could look like in terms of the vision and the model. Of course, we hadn't figured out how it could look like as a functioning day-to-day school, but the ideas were all there. And when he presented that to me, I think, again, just because of my own journey of trying to figure out on my own, being like, oh, okay, so this is a school where young people can come to figure out what they're passionate about and learn how to create value related to their own interests in a way that also creates impact in the world, right? That's what I was trying to do throughout my whole life. And I'm still in the process of doing, but the fact that we can help younger students also do that and start that journey, and we can be sort of coaches and guides in that journey, really resonate with me. So yeah, that's where essentially in that coffee meeting, which was our first time to meet in person, we sort of shook on it. Like, hey, let's do it. Let's start this school. And at the same time, we had met Jason, who's our co-founder and our head of academics and college advising. So he really helped us to figure out how can we be really truthful to our mission, but then still make sure that our students will be attractive for colleges, including all kinds of colleges, including the Ivy League or more progressive colleges. So we're not limiting our students' opportunities. So yeah, going a bit more into the practicals of then how we started the school. So again, this is April last year, April 2023, right? So I meet Scott. We're like, let's start this school. We ended up, at that point, obviously, we had no students. We hadn't pitched to anyone that we're going to start this school. And then, though, by mid-June, I remember the day, actually, 14th of June, we launched our own website. This was at the time where ChatGPT and Midjourney and all this stuff was new. So we even used like Midjourney to generate these kind of like images, and we just launched the website. And again, at that point, June, we had no students, and people were asking us like, when are you going to start the school? Like next year, in 2 years? And we're like, no, we're going to start as soon as we have one student. I mean, it's not going to be ideal for that student, but we're ready to start anytime. So we'll start like this summer, August, speaking last year. And so yeah, we launched the website in June, hoping to start school in August. And fortunately, in that time period, we managed to have 6 students join our school. And we started in late August, again, 2023. So, part of the reason why we were able to start so quickly and in such a lean way was firstly, we started out of the Plug and Play Innovation Center, which is essentially like a co-working space. So we didn't build out this big campus. Yoshi and Robin, as I mentioned to you before we started this call, we will actually be moving into our own campus space November this year. But last year, we started out of this co-working space in Shibuya. And so that meant, if we had a 3rd student or 4th student join, it's quite simple. We just need to pay their monthly fees to be at our campus every day. And that was it. We didn't do huge promotion because we weren't trying to just attract hundreds of students or anything like this. We have no outside investors, so there was no pressure to fill the seats. Again, we were happy to start with one, but we were very fortunate. And in that time period, we managed to, like I mentioned, meet 5-6 families that ended up joining our school in August. So I'm happy to answer any more questions about that process, but it went very quickly. And it was like, we met in April, and oh my gosh, now it's August 28th and it's our first day of school and we have 6 students coming to us, and this is it. This is their high school, right? But, we were ready, of course, and first year couldn't have gone any better. So just want to say that out there, say that too, in case people listening are wondering, like, was that a responsible thing to do? Like, no, we made sure we started in a way that we could manage, and we set the right expectations with the parents and the students. And in the end, it's just all about having great fit students. We were selective. We didn't, persuade anyone to come here. We were like, we're not a school for everyone. This is what we do. This is why we do it. This is what we don't do right now. And this is why we don't do that. And kind of, do you like it or not? Right. And let's build this school together was our approach.
Amazing. Having seen your demo day videos from winter, the various videos online and so on, it sounds almost like a dream school, because if I understand correctly, you don't get homework. You spend 80% of your time doing things that are meaningful to you, and you still get accredited, for example, with APs and GPAs and things that will set you up to go to any university in the world, as far as I understand. Can you tell us a bit about the nitty-gritty, the details of how does the school work from a curriculum perspective, and what is it like in the day of a student there?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Robin. So you just mentioned accreditation there, so I'll mention that. So as a new school, you have to be in operation for some time, and then you start the accreditation process. So we have already actually kickstarted the accreditation process with MSA, Middle States Association. So we're due to be fully accredited November next year. We're going through the standard process. So that's really exciting too. Maybe many people wouldn't have believed we would be fully accredited, but we're being fully accredited by next year, November already. So that's really great for our students, for, again, college purposes and just general credibility purposes. In terms of our curriculum, so that demo day video, for anyone who's interested in the school, I think this podcast won't be enough time to go in detail. So please watch that demo day video. It's a 1-hour recording, but you'll hear our head of school, Scott, myself, and our, Jason talk about the school. You'll see our 5 students present their projects about, an AI voice assistant they created, or a drone project, or a marketing project. It's pretty cool. So I'd encourage everyone to watch that. But in that video, as you heard, Robin, we mentioned this 80-20% thing. Actually, so that was in our first semester, and over the course of a year, there's been a new thing that we've sort of added to our curriculum. So I'll explain things as it is now. We essentially have 3 pillars or 3 parts to our curriculum, and therefore also our school day. The first big focus is on project work. So, you can call it project-based learning. But the students are all working on a project that is 100% personalized to their interests, right? We don't assign projects to them like, hey, students, you have to choose between a sustainability project or an AI project. No, we start with every student from zero, working with them to articulate what's their grand mission, who are the interesting people and innovative organizations at the front lines of innovation in that mission that you right now think is really interesting to you. And let's work to design a project together that you can work on to figure out whether that is something you may want to continue to do. If so, great, let's go deeper together. If not, that's good. You learned something, like we talked about earlier about my own journey in my 20s too. You realize maybe what aspects of it don't resonate with you. So great, we'll pivot, and we're with you every step of the way. So that's this project work. You can think of it as this hyper-personalized project work that is very nuanced. It's not time restricted. It's not theme limited. There'll be authentic goals that we will create, milestones that we'll create together with the students. But every student is literally on their own journey, and we're working with each of them with each of their projects. So that's the project work part of our curriculum. And we also have the sort of self-paced academics, which students use online platforms, mainly like Khan Academy, to sort of advance through math and science mainly, because this is important knowledge and also important for college. So our students will do grade 9 biology or grade 9 algebra if they are a grade 9 student at our school. We've also added a third component, which is the research paper. You could think of this as inquiry-based learning, but the students do a personalized research paper that's related to their project interest at that time. And this is important because, even for things like colleges, they care about their academic institutions at the end of the day. Okay, you might have all the grades and you might have all these cool projects, but hey, can you think critically? Can you write well, right? This is where our students can show these universities that, hey, not only do I have these projects that I'm passionate about and I got these great grades in the AP scores or the SATs, I also can write really well in things that I'm passionate about, right? So in this research paper pillar of our school curriculum, the students will do a research paper related to their interests. So one of our students, for example, is interested in humanoid robots. So he did a research paper first looking at the history of robotics, right? So it's just kind of historical research. When was the first quote unquote humanoid robot presented to the public? What was the evolution of technology? And thinking ahead, what does this mean for society? Can humanoid robots really help us in the workplace? Will they take our jobs? Questions like this is what that particular student would have researched. So to sum up, the project-based learning aspect of our curriculum, the sort of problem-based, self-paced academics aspect of our curriculum pillar, and then our third research paper component. And in terms of the school day, it's not really 80-20 anymore. It's more basically the students come in at 8:30. We have a group check-in with everyone just to see how everyone's doing. They can share anything related to their projects or anything else that's important happening outside of school. And after that group check-in, though, from 8:45 to 11:45 is basically project work time. We obviously have a break at 10 to 10:15. But that project work time is, again, this time for the students to work on their own projects. And during that time, we'll have one-on-one or, 2-on-1 coaching sessions with each student. to just really guide them on that process and to make sure that we're aligned on what they're working on. So whatever they're working on, whether it's the design of their project or their next immediate goal or what they're going to work on that day, are things that have to make sense to them, because obviously it's their project, it's their dream, it's their future. But it has to also make sense to us as the coaches and as their sort of guides in this process, right? So we align, and then they go, and the best scenario is they feel good about what they need to do, and we feel good about what they need to do, and they just go on and do it, right? And some days the students don't even need coaching sessions because they know what they're working on from the previous day. So we might let them work, or we might actively be like, hey, let's just have a check-in anyway to see where you are and help you get unstuck with anything you might be having challenges with, right? So that's the morning project work. And then we have quite a long extended lunch period for the students to socialize and go have lunch together or eat from our campus. And then the afternoon, 1 to 3:30, is divided into that self-paced academics time and that research paper time. So it's more like, maybe this whole percentages thing is going to keep evolving a little bit as our school evolves, but it's a little bit more that like 50% project work, 25%, self-paced academics, and 25% research paper. But I think you can see that they're all trying to meet the goal of helping the students figure out what they're passionate about, start that journey to actually create value in that thing you're interested in. So even after you graduate high school, you're already on that pathway and you have the skills and the tools and the guidance you need to kind of continue that journey, even through college and especially when you enter your professional life. And at the same time, given that, an immediate goal for almost any high school is to help students get into colleges, at least as, one standard pathway, we're also making sure we meet the goals of what college admissions officers and colleges in general, even though every college is looking for different things, what are they looking for? What do they value? And given that they only have 5 minutes to view a college application, the reality is you got to sort of check the boxes really efficiently. And that's where we've kind of created a curriculum that's very practical for all purposes, college admissions as well, if that makes sense.
I think a few things that stood out to me looking at the stories of your students is, first of all, one of them I remember was saying, I enjoy going to school in the morning. Like, I look forward to school. That's such a simple thing, but it's so telling about the experience there. I think also your approach seems to be extremely individualized. It's not about one size fits all. It's about really customizing the experience for each student. And I remember one of the students was saying how they completed grade 9 biology or something within 6 weeks, because you don't have to wait for like 3 months. If you're getting it, if you're like moving quickly, why wait? It sounds like a very effective way of learning in some sense. That being said, there must be, starting your own school, doing what you've done and what you're doing now, there must be so many challenges in different ways. Can you just share with us some of, or maybe one or two of the key challenges you've faced so far?
Yeah, so I will try and share a challenge or two. What's interesting though is, because even my co-founder and head of school, Scott, has been asked this question before, and it really is true. The reality is, like, this past first year, there's been no major challenges. Like, there's been no no drama, no major headaches, no huge crisis moments. And that's even honestly hard to believe for me. It feels almost like this strange, imposter syndrome is probably not the right word, but it's like, hey, like, we created this school in a year and things are, going well. And so how surely we would have had to overcome so many, crazy challenges to get to that point in that first year. But honestly, the reality was, like, nothing stands out to me as like, oh my God, that time, December 2023 was so, we were in this crisis there. Like, nothing like that happened. And I think it really comes down to just really good strategic decisions that, for all transparency, our head of school, Scott, really had huge conviction about and spearheaded. And obviously we all helped to sort of like execute that and, figure things out along the way. But that's one thing to say, honestly, is that it's been smooth. And I think it's, again, it comes down to not forcing anything. I mentioned earlier how we started out this co-working space. We have no outside investors. We have no pressure to fill the seats. We don't have to do this crazy marketing. We're okay to start with 3 students. We're okay to start with 5 students. It's not about that. It's just about starting in a way that's sustainable and managing for us, and making sure that we're focused on exactly what we say our school offers and just improving it over time, right? And so managing the expectations of families and students, making sure that we're selective right from the get-go to only accept students who are a great fit for the program. Robin, you mentioned that we have students who want to come to the school every day, right? And that is the case. So if you have students who want to come to the school every day, and you have founders and faculty members who want to create the school and want to improve the school experience and want to offer this unique school experience, then it's who's going to get in the way of that, right? Because at the end of the day, a school is a community or a space for students and teachers or faculty members to gather together for the students and the parents. Again, you might think that maybe we've had huge headaches or challenges with the parents, but again, because we had best fit families, we also had really supportive parents. So yeah, there hasn't been major challenges. If I can think of smaller challenges that may have happened, I don't know. Honestly, not too many things stand out. Maybe you can ask me a follow-up question, because you must be surely there's something. Of course there are challenges. We had okay, how do you support a given type of student with their project? How do we, obviously preparing for this demo day event, there was, a lot of work that went into it. But honestly, there were just small challenges, and they were just learning experiences, more information, more data in terms of what we need to do and how we need to do it. So
as you say, reflection of good strategy, good team, good execution. So that's all good. Maybe that segues quite nicely into successes. Working with young people, you must see so much positive change and have so many rewarding moments. But can you just share maybe 1 or 2 key highlights so far?
1, 2 key highlights. Yeah, for our students. It's hard. So because we started with 6 students, it's almost we're proud of all of our students, and each of those students had their really amazing outcomes. So it almost feels like I have to pick between students or something. I can share amazing moments for each of the students. I think a big highlight would be, our students are all working on their projects, right? And they're kind of entrepreneurial projects and things like this. We had an opportunity in, I think, November last year. So it was almost only 2-3 months into the school. We were actually invited by a teacher at ASIJ, Jason Kinsella. He was the main teacher for the entrepreneurship class that they actually have in ASIJ, and we were invited to a pitch event that they were organizing with this sort of startup youth incubator in Singapore called Young Founder Summit. And our students were also invited to present their projects, and that just for me was a highlight, because until that point it was just the 6 students and the 3 of us faculty members working out of this space in Shibuya and Plug and Play. And then, it's kind of our first time on the big stage, where now our students are presenting in front of these panelists, and we're with all these students from ASIJ. They're obviously a big school. They were presenting in groups. They were older than our students. And I was nervous. Our students were really nervous, because again, we're not used to being in such a big environment too, with so many different students and all these things. But yeah, I just remember being so proud of our students then, because I knew they all had projects that they were passionate about, but they were able to first, overcome just the challenges and nervousness of speaking in public, but they were able to sort of confidently and passionately present what they were working on. And I think the audience could really feel that excitement for those projects, because the students themselves were authentically excited in what they were doing, right? And for our students to get that sort of whether it's that applause or feedback, not just from ourselves, the internal people in the school as the coaches and the faculty members who obviously have vested interest, but to get it from outsiders who are just like from the outside looking in at our students and being like, wow, like you are all working on things that you're interested in and passionate about, and you're on this great path, so just keep going, right? That is not one particular moment per se, but just seeing all of our students present, and they were ecstatic after coming out of that like presentation, right? We almost had like a small huddle and we're like, you all did a great job, and they're like, yeah, we did a great job, and it was just like a really happy moment for all of us. So that's definitely a highlight that stands out. And we've had other highlights where our students, I think, were able to, through their projects, actually create some kind of value. Again, in the beginning, the focus of the project is more on, you design a project and you start working on that project to validate whether you're really interested in that thing. If you are really interested in a thing and you want to go deeper, then the next step is to actually, okay, you've created something that you think is cool. Let's actually see if this thing has value. Like, let's see if it's actually, it's not just something that's cool and interesting and innovative, but it's something that can be of value to other people, right? And so I can share one project where a student was working on like a marketing project to promote sort of cafes and restaurants in Shibuya aimed at teenagers, because apparently teenagers find it hard to find a place that's kind of affordable and Instagram friendly in Shibuya, Harajuku, etc. And so that student was first working on like almost like a blog site and trying to create like an Instagram page to promote these cafes and restaurants. But in the end, she ended up creating a map, which actually, Robin, was partly also inspired by your work with MyMizu and your app, how you can see where you can refill water bottles. But she used the software called MapMe to create a map of these affordable, cute cafes for teenage girls in Shibuya and Harajuku. And she had like 50 locations on the map. And then she went to go speak to different cafes and restaurants to say, hey, I'm promoting your cafes and restaurants on this map for teenagers because I think your place is really attractive. Could we maybe strike up some kind of partnership? Like maybe if a teenager comes to your cafe through the map, is there any kind of like discount you could offer? And a restaurant actually called Pota Pasta in Shibuya agreed that if any young person, teenager, came to their restaurant through the map and showed them that sort of app, that young person would get a free, iced tea or drink with their pasta, right? So that's like, there's no money being exchanged, but that's like an informal, formal sort of business partnership of sorts, right? Where she's been able to create value for the young person who's using that map to find a cafe, but also for the restaurant in theory, where now maybe at least one or two more young person than previously are coming to their pasta place because they found the restaurant on the map. So yeah, that's an example of creating real value, right? And I remember that student coming back and being really excited about how like she's basically managed to agree on this deal, right? And
Wow.
after that, she tried forming more partnerships with other cafes, and that was harder. And that's just the reality of doing work, right? Of working on your own projects. Some people might support it. Other people might feel like they're not ready to work with you. That's just the reality of things. Our students go through these really authentic, real-world experiences through their projects. It's like, hey, if you found what you're interested in and if you found what you care about, then why don't we just start trying to create real value? It doesn't have to be making money or anything like that. Let's just try and actually create something that is valuable to other people. And that's, as we all know, like hugely important. It's critical if you want to start your own project or you want to work for an organization, right? The whole goal is to create value for somebody, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are different types of highlights. Hope that makes sense.
No, I'm getting goosebumps. Wow, that's so awesome, Kyle. That's such a niche, area, but that project was possible because of that girl and her perspective of the world. And it's obviously a problem that she found amongst herself and her group of friends that she, wanted to solve. It's not something that your 40-year-old, 50-year-old average salaryman in Japan would want to solve, right? So
Correct.
it was really intrinsically something that she was interested in and she wanted to solve. And that's why I think she was able to succeed with that. But that's such an inspiring story. And I'm sure that, just kind of moving on to the last bit of our podcast here, I'm sure that, your students have learned a lot, from this 1 year education that they received. But at the same time, like Kai, you as a leader, as a co-founder, I'm sure you've also learned a lot too. So maybe if you could share some of your learnings, you must have grown in so many ways building out TIF. If you had to reflect on your own personal growth during this journey, like what would you say were some of the key growth areas or things that you learned along the way?
Yeah. So, thank you, Yoshi. Key things that I've learned. Yeah, I mean, so I feel like I've learned so much in this past year. It's almost like I've almost forgotten how I used to think about work and how I used to approach work because, we've just been so deep into this project of work, creating and building the school and working on this with Scott and Jason and many other people that have obviously been supporting us along the way. I think a big word that comes to mind is like just alignment, just not forcing things. So even, in terms of the co-founders of the school and deciding to start this school with Scott and Jason, it's like we really didn't force it, right? It was like, even though it was an exciting opportunity, it was like, hey, like, okay, of course it would be cool to work on this thing together, but let's just take a step back. Let's just really make sure that we're fully aligned. Of course, we're going to have different strengths. We're going to have different personalities. That's if anything, helpful. But are we really aligned in terms of, how we want to work and what we're trying to build and why we're doing it, right? And I was given that time and space to reflect on that and to really come in alignment with discussion and with time with my partners to essentially feel like, yes, we are so strongly aligned here. It's almost like there's no way out. Like we're going to do this thing, right?
Wow.
And that alignment applies to like everything else. Like, again, with the students and the families who joined our school, like, are we aligned? We're not trying to force you to come here. We're not going to try and like sell it to you. Like, this is what we are doing. This is what we are aiming to do. This is what we are fully confident about. This is what we still need to work out. But are you aligned? It might be a family that would be interested in our school 4 or 5 years down the line, but might not be the kinds of students and families that want to join on day one or year one, right? But we try to have that communication as transparent as possible because ultimately, if you attract a family or a student or even a business partner or anyone that's not ultimately good fit and you realize over time that you're not truly aligned with, well, that's going to create problems for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest way to avoid future headaches is to make sure that you're aligned from the beginning as much as possible and communicate in a way that you can sort of realize that alignment. So that's what we did within our business partnerships or our school partnerships with the teachers, with the students and the parents who join the school. And this is what we'll do with future faculty members, even partners that we may collaborate or not collaborate with. There's just no reason, there's no need to force it. Right. Because it's not going to be in anyone's best interest over time. So that's something that has really feels really true for me. And if I can just maybe give one more example, even in terms of working with the students, and this is where, we can all grow. I've got a lot to learn and develop as a co-founder of a school, as a coach, as a support coach in the school. Like I've got a lot of room for improvement too, of course. And, when you're coaching the students, right, sometimes it's clear, like what they already have a clear idea of what they need to work on or what they want to work on. And you have a clear idea for how you can support them. But other times it's not clear. And I can say that I've had moments or tendencies where when it's not clear, you feel like you need to force it a little bit, or I did at least. It's like, I'm a coach at the school. I'm supposed to be guiding them. So, hey, like, maybe even if I'm not 100% sure, I'm going to suggest an idea or a direction to them, without that huge certainty. And what happens then is you might come to some kind of agreement, but you're not fully aligned. It doesn't feel completely right.
Right.
And then the
Right,
student
right.
goes off and work on the projects, and you're kind of just left in this sort of like unsure area. So it's also important to just just stay aligned with the students. And I think also be transparent. And it's like, if you're not like, let's say as a coach as a school, if you're not 100% sure on maybe the way that you should guide that student in that particular moment, then it's okay. Don't force it. Don't try and create some kind of alignment with the student that's not really there. Maybe just open it up to experimentation. Maybe just throw out some ideas. If the student has an idea, you're not sure about the idea, they're not sure about that idea, but let's just lean on the student's idea and then change your mindset towards helping that student validate whether their idea was actually good or not, right? And so and that's great, because you even provide more autonomy and freedom to that student, right? Rather than kind of guiding every aspect of what they do. And so, yeah, alignment also with the students, with what they're working on. Don't force things. Don't feel like you have to do things because that's just what an educator or teacher is supposed to do. Just focus on the goal, focus on what feels right and makes sense for everyone involved. And that's something I still have to continue to work on. But fortunately, that's definitely like the mindset and the culture of the school. So I think all of us, the students and the faculty members, we can all sort of grow and develop in that mindset.
Interesting. Wow. Alignment is key, definitely, 100%. So I'm glad that you raised that topic as well. Okay. So I guess my last question of today's podcast is advice that you would give aspiring change makers. So this might even be advice that you give your own students as well. But, we have a lot of young listeners like also listening to this podcast. So for those, who are maybe high school students or even university students, or maybe just young professionals, right, who are thinking of starting their own thing, whether it be a company, a small project, or whatever, what sort of advice or tips would you like to can you share with them?
Yes. So yeah, that's a good question. I think it's because it's actually like the approach at our school. So now it's just going to sound like I'm selling the school and I'm selling our school's approach. But it's like,
Of course.
honestly, like, even if I were to create my own project and my own business in the future, I would go through this sort of process that we do at the school too. And it's something that, when I speak to even young professionals, they're like, oh, like, yeah, what your students are doing makes sense. Like, I should even try that myself. So the advice, or perhaps the approach that I would encourage young people to consider is to, first just think of, dream up this, you can call it a mission or whatever. Just think about like how you wish the world could change. What is something that from your own personal experiences and your thoughts and ideas so far is something that you wish existed in the world and you think would be a truly meaningful thing to work towards, right? And sometimes I think we can be a bit hesitant to try and articulate or even communicate that dream world because it feels maybe unattainable, or it feels too entrepreneurship 101 or something. But I think it's a meaningful exercise, because once you articulate that mission and you really reflect on, is that just something that, again, feels cool or sounds cool, or is it really something that you can feel in sort of your heart or your gut that you care about this? And that's a good sign. Then, any meaningful mission in the world, there are already people working at the front lines of innovation in that direction, right? So then the next step I would encourage people to do is to then actually go out and meet the people who are working on those things that you think are just so cool. And by talking to them, I think naturally you'll come to some sense of conclusion as to are these my people, if you want to call it that, or can I see myself as part of this world? Because I think that was the big, maybe not mistake, but the kind of where my approach and my mindset was very limited was I was just trying to figure out what was good for me in a vacuum, as opposed to just really thinking myself as part of a bigger picture, and in terms of where do I fit in relation to what's already happening and the kinds of people who are already working on these amazing things, and Can I see myself in this world? So I think you ultimately have to just engage with other people that are doing the things that you think you want to do, and just really proactively communicate with those people. And then, try work on a project that emulates what those other people are already doing, or just find someone to collaborate on a project with and just go step by step. Again, don't force it. As you're working on things, you'll realize whether you're aligned with that industry or as a mission as a whole, right? And just one last thing, because that's one of the things that I realized, sometimes when you study things in university, you study it because you think it's just like academically interesting, or you think it's like important for the world or something. But maybe it's something that doesn't really align with who you are and where your natural strengths are. So when I went to do my master's, I ended up doing it in development studies, and it was looking at like things like environmental conflicts and, land conflicts and how like that affects different minority communities and things like this from more of like a human rights angle. And that was something that I was really interested in. And I had a lot of respect for the people that do that kind of grassroots human rights work to try and, help people's lives and create impact, right? But once I graduated that master's program and I went to go speak to these like grassroots NGOs in northern Myanmar and northern Thailand, doing really intense, almost like life-threatening work, I just realized like, wow, I have so much respect for these people, but I don't feel like I have the character and the personality traits to really thrive and even, you could say, like survive in this world. It just didn't feel like it was for me. And that's why ultimately for me, I feel like education and working in this kind of new education is definitely something that just fits my natural tendencies, the way I think, the way I like to work with people, all of these things. So sometimes the best way to figure out whether you want to do something is to just go engage and have conversations with the people already working on those things, and don't force it, and take your time, and hopefully over time it will just feel right to you. But again, you never really know till you try it, so you got to try it. Yeah,
exactly.
Start young is what I would say.
Start young, yes. And people go talk to people, go talk and learn. Well, that was a wrap, Kai. Thank you so much. We crossed the 1 hour mark there, so I think unfortunately we have to come to an end here. But where can people find you? Could you maybe a little bit share to our listeners where people can find out more about your school? Maybe they can do a campus visit. If you can share just that bit of information towards the end, that'll be great. Yeah.
So most of the main information about school is obviously on our website. If you type in the Innovation Fellowship or TIF, innovationfellowship.org, you'll see our website. On our website, we have that like demo day event video. So that's like at current, the best insight into our school, who we are, who our students are, what kind of projects they're working on. So definitely please check that out. We are also on LinkedIn. If someone wants to connect with me directly, then Kai Childs on LinkedIn. But we also have our school's LinkedIn page, and that's where we post our most regular updates, and you can get a deeper insight into how the day-to-day of our school is going. So please just reach out, and no problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kai, for taking the time to speak with us today. And so to all of our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and share. We'll be back with more stories of impact very, very soon. And remember, friends, the power to create change is in your hands. Keep leading the way, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Let's keep brewing change, one cup of coffee at a time. Thank you. Bye.